Welcome to the Unreal Engine ArcViz training series. We're going to go over a lot of really cool topics here, and we're also going to not go over some things. A little background about myself before we do get started. My background is in animation, motion design, and visualization. I now work for a healthcare architecture firm doing VR and ArcViz full-time. So I'm always happy to answer any questions, and I'd like to start giving back to the community. So here we go. So we will cover the basics for visualization in Unreal Engine. We'll start with the basic understanding that you have just opened Unreal for the first time. We'll just go from scratch as if you're just starting out, and I want to really get you guys equipped for doing this professionally or for yourselves. It's so fulfilling and a lot of fun, and I really hope that I can share some of that experience with you. We'll talk about physically based rendering, or PBR, what it means, why it's great, and why we're using it in Unreal, and how to best make your materials work with PBR. We'll also talk about lighting and rendering techniques. We're going to go over how to bake your lights, get rid of a lot of light errors. We'll talk all about light mass and a lot of the details and the little finer things that go along with the lighting. We'll talk about terminology as if you haven't done anything with 3D before. Well, maybe not that basic, but we'll talk about a lot of the things in Unreal that maybe aren't defined very well elsewhere. And we'll talk about a lot of tips and tricks, things that I found in the past that have really been helpful for ArcViz. We will not be talking about Revit. We will be starting with a Revit file. So let's assume that you're starting an ArcViz project and the architect or the design team just gave you this Revit file, told you to make it look pretty. So that's where we'll be starting. You'll start with a Revit file for free. We'll go with a bunch of free assets, so you don't have to buy anything to do this. We're not going to talk about architecture per se. I'm not an architect. I'm not going to pretend to be. We'll go off what you need to know. How about that? We're going to avoid 3D modeling as much as we can. There are some times later on in this short series where we do need to get into some 3ds Max to add some details to some models, but we're going to avoid that for the most part. I'd be happy to go more into that later in other tutorials if it would be helpful. We're not going to talk about Substance, either Designer or Painter. We're not going to talk about those plugins, integration, anything like that. Again, maybe that could be better suited for a future tutorial. And we're not going to talk about traditional level design. So when you're doing ArcViz, you're really making something as realistic as you can and trying to base your design decisions off of what the user will see. With level design, you're able to have a little bit more freedom with how you're directing the user's eye and their attention, and draw more attention to some things, and kind of fudge what would actually be physically real. We're not going to do that here. This is all about ArcViz. So here we go. All right, here we go. So we're going to be using Revit 2018, 3ds Max 2018, and then Unreal Engine 419. And what you also need to have is Unreal Studio on your Epic Games account. So Unreal Studio gives you access to Datasmith, which is a really great enterprise program to go from 3ds Max, SketchUp soon, to Unreal Engine. So we'll be able to do that very quickly, very easily. All you have to do is go to Unreal Engine's website, go to Enterprise, Unreal Studio, sign up in here so that your account has access. Then you need to download this exporter for 3ds Max and go through the prompts to install that. Pretty straightforward. And then in your Epic Games launcher, go down here to Unreal Studio Beta, and then you need to install the engine. And remember, we're using 419, so make sure you have that up to date as well. And we'll come back to that here in a bit. So here's our Revit file that we found online. This is a advanced-ish office building. Looks sort of empty, almost industrial. I will not pretend to be an architect, nor will I pretend to know Revit. So we'll just go ahead and download that free file there. That'll be in the description. And here's what it looks like. You can kind of see what we'll be working with. There's some foliage. There's a lot of empty offices. We have a lot of glass furniture inside, skylights. Looks pretty good. A lot of stuff to work with. It'll be a good challenge for us. So we're not actually going to do anything in Revit. We actually need to go into 3ds Max, and you'll go import, and this is important. You use link Revit, and then you'll specify that Revit project that you just downloaded. It'll ask you about the skylight system. You can hit yes or no. It doesn't really matter at this point. I'm not sure if there's any difference. So in here, we can see a nice wireframe view of everything. We have all of our objects. I've already added some things here, so I'll go over that. But you can see everything came in 3ds Max. We have our cameras, we have lights in here, thousands and thousands of objects. Now, the important thing that we have to do in here is to combine like objects. So in your project, if you just imported this, you'll have every single one of these mullions, and they'll all be separate objects. So what we'll need to do is I would go up here and I would search. I've already done this, I'll just walk you through it. You type in rectangular mullion, and then it'll have just those. You select, here we go. Let's do the roof, for example. No, let's do these walls. So we have these walls selected because you just search for them here, and then you will hide unselected. So if these were all of your mullions, you could drag over all of these, and then go to this utilities icon here, go down to collapse, and then choose collapse selected. So we need to do that for groups of mullions, and let's unhide everything so that you're going to get to this point. So you'll have different blocks of these mullions. And this will be important when we get to light building later on and having unreasonable light bake time. So you can see I've kind of blocked these all together. I'm sure there's much more efficient ways to do this. I'm not great with 3ds Max. And I didn't do those. I'll show you how to do that real quick. So we're just going to select all of those. Unselect these. There we go. And then we just want to go to collapse, collapse selected, boom. Now that's just one object. There we go. I didn't get the back ones, but that's fine. Okay, so once you've done that for all your mullions, we actually need to do that for all of the glass panels as well. Now what we could do, there's, I don't know, hundreds, maybe 1,000 different glass panels all over this building. What we need to do is collapse those so that they're one object per plane. So you'd have one window essentially going from here to here. It'll have gaps in it for all these mullions, but it'll be one object. Same for this stairwell here. We'll have one object here, one object for this whole surface. It's all transparent, so we don't need to worry about resolution or anything like that. So this is important down the line, but it's better to get out of the way early. So once you have your windows collapsed, your mullions collapsed, all we need to do, now that we have that 3ds Max exporter installed, we go, let's select everything, go up here, File, Export, and choose whatever folder you would like to work in here, and go down and choose Unreal Datasmith, and we'll just Datasmith test. And then here, we have everything selected, so you can go ahead and choose that. It'll take a minute to process. I've already gone through this, so you can do that, and then I will not waste your time. So here we go. Here's our Unreal Engine project. What you'll do is you go to your launcher, choose Launch 419, and then let's walk through that. Yes, here we go. So you'll go in here, choose New Project, and you'll have this new tab up here. You choose Unreal Studio, and we're going to do a blank project. Product Viewer can be used for some nice commercial projects. I haven't done anything with this yet, but I imagine there's some really great use cases there. And then choose whatever you would like for the name. And then you'll plop into this project right here. Empty, you can see there's very nice sky in here, but not a lot going on. So we're not going to worry about anything in here right now. All we're going to do is in our browser choose Import Datasmith. There we go. And then you'll go and find where you put that. Where did you put it, Steve? Yeah. All right, there we go. And then we'll choose OK. And now we can see everything that we get from Datasmith. So we want the geometry, we want all the materials. Lights are great. Cameras we don't really care about, but we'll do it anyway. And then let's do this arrow and go down to Static Mesh Options. And this is important. We don't want 512 resolution light maps. It'll all make sense later, but we want that to be smaller. So we're just going to do 64 and 128 for now. And then choose import. This will take a second here. You can see exactly how much complexity there is in this model. If we hadn't combined all of those mullions and all of those glass panels, we would have, I think it's like 2,000 objects to work with. All right, and here we go. So you can right-click, drag to move around, left-click to select something, and then while you're holding right-click, W, A, S, and D, and then Q and E to move up and down. Pretty straightforward. And here we are. We have the whole building. It looks like a very nice scale. Obviously, the glass is white. And since I selected this, you can see I collapsed that group, this group, and then these mullions, if you select those, you can see, yeah, it all wraps around. So rather than having each of those individual objects, we just have smaller selections to work with. If we go inside, we can see we have all of that furniture. We have even these railings. And this is the great thing about Datasmith. Every object has its own pivot where it should be. If you were working with Revit in Unreal, say, a year or 2 years ago, what you would get is, oh dear, you'd have all of these thousands of objects with the same origin point at 0, 0, 0. So if you wanted to select this chair and move it 10 centimeters, you'd select it, look way over here in the distance, find the pivot, and you'd have to move that 10 centimeters and then come back. So it's very tedious, very aggravating. But now with Datasmith, it brings in everything. If you had V-Ray materials applied to these in the first place, you would have those in Unreal. I imagine they're going to have the Autodesk materials here pretty soon, but they don't yet. So that is a really great thing. And we'll see how the light maps play out as well, but everything is very nice and very clean and very much to scale. You can see too, we have the cameras that we actually had set up in Revit. And they even have like the focal length and aperture that was set up there. And if you select one of these lights, you can see we actually have the intensity values and the, I don't know why it's black, but the attenuation radiuses, the temperature, everything that was set up in Revit actually came in. So it's very, very incredible tool for us for architectural visualization. So I just selected those, hit H to hide. Yeah, so we can kind of see inside now. Looks pretty good. So first thing, we just want to go up here and choose Save All. Just get that stuff out of our memory and commit everything. All right. There's one more thing we need to do very quickly. We'll go into our content browser here. I've made a couple folders. These are just for myself. You have this folder that came in with your Datasmith file, whatever you named that. I made a textures folder, which we'll get into here in a bit with a HDRI folder inside of that. Meshes, materials, and then blueprints. I'll explain those things as we get into them, but you might want to add those folders as you see fit. And now one more thing we need to do, we need to choose Add New and go to Add Feature or Content Pack. Go over here to Content Packs, and we'll choose Starter Content. This will give us a lot of really nice materials to start with, some basic particle systems, and some good starting points here. They actually have birds in there? Huh. Weird, okay. Yeah, so here we are. We have all of those materials if you choose that Starter Content Materials section. And to apply a material, you really just click and drag. Boom. Now that ground has grass on it. I'm going to Control-Z, undo that. And then we're just going to save all one more time. And we're actually going to close the project, and then you want to reopen it real quick. I'm not sure why this is a necessary step, but in order for us to replace materials quick and efficiently, we actually need to close and reopen the project. If someone could tell me why, that would be great. I really don't understand. Okay, so you'll notice when we open the project again, we're back in that starting map that we had. Go to your Datasmith folder that you imported, and oh, okay, I had it named test map. Yeah, it'll be in your content section, or if you received a prompt, it's whatever you named it there. All right, and here we are. So first of all, let's get rid of all of this gnarly looking glass. If we open up this material, we'll see what they did for this. For some reason, they just gave it this diffuse color, and then they desaturate and then give it almost no roughness. So every material that we have looks very much like this, but with a different color value. Very strange. I don't understand why they go that route. If you select your glass and then choose this icon right here, it'll show you exactly where in your content browser to find that. I'll select that glass, and then you notice there's two other glass materials. I'll control click to select those as well. And then we're just going to hit delete. And here, this is important, we need to choose to replace this with search m_glass. This came in with our starter content. We'll choose that, so we're going to replace all of these meshes glass materials with this glass that we like. So we'll replace references, choose OK, and save all of those. All right, and now you see we have this glass. If we open up this glass, you'll see there's a lot more going on. We have this arbitrary color, specularity, roughness, opacity, and then this is for level of detail for refraction. If you're running a VR project, you'll actually want to disable this, so Alt left click the refraction so you don't have glass refractive values in Unreal. That might be fixed after 4.19, but currently refraction is a big no-no for VR. So choose that, hit save, and we'll go up here. I'm just going to close my 3ds project. Don't save. Hello, coffee. All right. So here we are again. Let's go up here. Let's go to project settings under the edit tab. Let's do some early stuff that we just got to get out of the way. When you have a scene and you're looking around here and flying around, it's applying some automatic post processes to make everything look pretty good. But we don't want that. We don't want it to polish the turd, so to speak, before we polish it ourselves. Or just no turds entirely, please. So we'll go in here, uncheck bloom, uncheck ambient occlusion. Let's do both of those. Uncheck auto exposure. And then, personally, I like lumens as default, so I'm just going to go ahead and check those. And we'll go ahead and, is there anything else? Yeah. Oh, go up to maps and modes up here near the top. And I'm going to choose test map, which is what I named this map. Choose that as your default, so that every time you open the project, you'll enter this map by default. There you go. Choose save all again. I'm going to go to edit preferences. This is just a personal thing. I hate autosave, so I'm going to go to loading and saving and uncheck enable autosave. I like to live life on the edge a little bit. All right, so if we just explore our scene a little bit, we have this nice hallway up here on the top floor. Most of these offices, it looks like they're all empty. Yep. Yeah, not a lot going in there. If we go down here, oh yeah, there's this nice little cafeteria area. Very minimal design. I like it. I like it. I'm gonna select that, delete. Yeah, we have a nice arch here. I'll get to that black thing, that fracturing coming in here in a moment. We have some nice views up here, but my personal favorite right now is like a nice view of the lobby from here. Yeah, so find a nice spot, and then you go up here to this tab, go down to Bookmarks and set bookmark. And we're going to do bookmark 1. So now whenever we're moving around, if you hit 1 on your keyboard, it snaps you right back there. So as we're going forward and making progress and stuff, you can use that to check your progress and see how you're doing. Now I'm also going to go down to this cafeteria that we noticed, and I'll make another bookmark here, and we'll do bookmark 2, set bookmark 2. So now if we go 1, 2, camera 1, camera 2. Let's go to our camera 1, and let's get rid of all that black junk up here. So go up to your world outliner. It might be over here on your system. I sort of rearranged mine a little bit. Select this one of these white circles up here, and you'll see it's this area light that they brought in with Datasmith. I'm not sure if this is going to be a feature in 420 or something, but currently it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo that just gets in the way. So we'll expand our view a little bit, and you want to control click all of those white circles. Be sure you don't select these light objects. We're just doing those white circles. So select each of those. Shouldn't be too many. Okay, once you have all of those selected, you just delete them all. And then let's also go to these lights. Yeah, okay. So we'll actually select the top one and then shift click the bottom one to select all of those. And hit Control G on your keyboard to group them. So if you select one of them now, you select all of them. That'll help us going forward instead of having to select all of those every time. And I'm not sure why this light color is set to black, but we don't like that, so we're going to go white because we actually want to emit light. And I think this is like a spotlight intensity for some reason, so I'm going to turn that down to like, I don't know, 65. Yeah. And then we want to turn down the attenuation radius. These lights are spreading out pretty far, and I like to keep it pretty tightly constrained. So I'll go, let's see, try 300. Let's do 400. Yeah, I want it to go just past the floor, but not so far that it's, you know, way up here, affecting the atmosphere, so to speak. And next, let's do the same thing for those table lamps. So I'm going to select those, group them, set those to white. There we go. Let's turn that down to, let's say 40, and then attenuation, 250. Yeah, there we go. We'll see how those temperature values play out too. I'm not sure if those will look very good. And then we have these lights on the wall. Same thing for those. Oop, there we go. And group and set to white. There we go. Let's do 55. There we go. And let's try 350. Yeah, so you'll see that we already have some very basic lighting and shadow artifacts going on, and everything is super reflective because of that roughness value we saw earlier. So if we go in this paint, we'll see it's almost set to 0 roughness, and then specular is set pretty high as well. So we'll replace all of that here in a bit, but first we're just going to worry about the lighting. So there are two different kinds of lights that we're ever going to worry about in Unreal. There's dynamic and then static. Dynamic lights obviously move as an object moves. If you have the sun flying across the sky, you get the shadows moving across the floor. If you have a player throwing a flashlight across the room, you'll see that light at the end of the flashlight spin around and move appropriately. If we have a light sitting in a lamp that we know is always going to be static and always affecting the same things in the environment, we want that to also be static. And up here, movable is entirely dynamic, static is entirely, obviously, static. Stationary, on the other hand, is a bit of both. So we'll mix dynamic as well as static lighting. If we go up here to our search, and let's search light, we'll also see we have a skylight down here. We'll come back to that in a moment, but we have a sun. Oh, we have 2 skylights. I'm going to delete one of those skylights, so just have one. We have a sun in here. Where's that sun? I'll just move it over here. There we go. These are our snaps. I'm just going to undo all of those. I don't like snapping so much. If you hit G on the keyboard, you can show and hide all of these game elements. So if we unhide everything, I can see the way the sun is pointing, and you'll see these shadows are indicative of that as well. So I would like to, let's move that in here so we can see a little bit better. I'd like to set it up so we have a nice shadow coming through the windows into the hallway here. So we're just going to turn that a little bit. Yeah, that looks good. Maybe something like that. So then we'll get a little bit on the wall. We'll get some nice light bouncing through here. And then we get this really nice skylight shining through the wall as well. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. And then we're not going to worry about the sky sphere quite yet. We'll turn down our sun value to 3.1. 3.14. It's just a sort of arbitrary value chosen for sun. I'm going to reset the temperature. I'm not sure what a good value for that would be. And we have this light source angle. That determines the amount of atmosphere that the sun is coming through. So if that is set low, we'll have very crisp shadows. But if we have it set to, let's do 3, that'll make it much more soft and almost blurry, like it's a cloudy day with the sun shining through the windows. So we'll go ahead and do that. We're not going to worry about any other settings for now. We'll come back to those here in a bit. But notice that this is set to stationary instead of static. All of our other lights should be set to static. If you're going to be working with VR, you're not... we have 2 suns as well. Hello, Tatooine. Yeah, get you out of here. All right. Okay, so we have the 1 sun now and the 1 skylight, and then we have all of these set to static. And like I was saying, in VR, you always want to go static. Maybe have 1 or 2 stationary lights, but stay away from movable lights as much as you can. That adds a lot of compute at runtime that you really don't want to have to struggle with later on down the line. Not to mention, you get some really nice lighting effects if you do go baked lighting. What you do with static lights. So now once we have all of these set up, let me look at my list and make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Yeah, I've gone through some of those lights. Yeah, let's do that skylight real quick. Okay, so you can use HDR lighting in Unreal. HDRI, if you don't know, is high dynamic range imaging. Basically, it's a picture that you use to light a scene. So I've gone to hdrihaven.com. I'll have a link here in the description as well. And on here, it's a really nice website. I'd encourage you to support them. You can choose different 360-degree HDRI images that you can use. And basically, we're going to choose one of these skies and use this to light our scene. So I'm really only concerned with the sky. I like the variance on the ground, and I like those clouds up there. Choose whatever you'd like. Man, that looks pretty good with those streaks up there. But if you wanted like a cloudless day for your project, you could do that. If you're going to do something crazy with a night scene, that would be nice. I kind of like that. Oh, that's a really good one. But for myself, I went ahead and I already downloaded this Cape Hill. I scrolled down here and I went to 8K. So choose this project size here. And then download that, and then you just drag it right into your scene. And then up here, remember, I had the content textures HDRI, and I put that in there already. So if you just drag that downloaded file into your project, you'll get something like this if you open it up. Notice that compression settings is set to HDR. That's important. That's going to enable us to use this for HDR lighting. So we'll close out of that, and let's go back down to our skylight in our world outliner here, and then change this captured scene to specified cube map. Now we're going to drag that cube map image right in here. And you can't really see quite yet, but that is being used around the scene to light everything by some large value. So if we set it to movable, you can kind of see how it's going to work. It's very washed out right now, but you can see dynamically what it would do. It would fill in a lot of shadows. It would basically simulate everything happening outside. You can see like the back of this pillar, where before it was much darker. Yeah, look like up here, you can see really fills everything in. So intensity, we'll just keep that at 1. Let's not do anything crazy. Make sure it is static because we want to keep that baked. And yeah, since we have everything collected together, we have all these mullions, all these glass windows. They're all transparent. Everything is looking pretty good. Check my list one more time, make sure we're not forgetting anything. Yes, most important step before we do a light build. You'll notice we have 995 actors in our scene here, so that's everything, including everything down to these doors, and we have, you know, the floor is one big object, but The stairwells over here, every single thing came in, but we're not worried about those. What we could even do down the line if we really wanted to would be to simply delete those. But at this point, I want to keep it as non-destructive as possible in case we decide we want to do some big, I don't know, turn this into like a paintball map or something. But we'll not worry about that. What we will do, go up to your Modes tab, and you'll search for Light Mass. There we go. And we want this Light Mass Importance volume. We'll go ahead and drag one of those into the scene. Basically, what this does is it tells the renderer when we bake our lighting, we want to focus all of our nice lighting in that area. So if you hit space a few times, you can move your gizmo, or we'll just select this right up here. And then we'll just drag along those gizmos, and we want that to encapsulate those two areas that we talked about before, that cafeteria and that top floor area. So we'll just, there we go. Make it a bit bigger than our scene. We don't want it to be too tightly constrained to the edges. Yeah, make that a little bit bigger. There we go. Looking good. Okay. So we'll call it here. This is a really good start. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to go up. Actually, yeah, we'll just go to build our lighting, and we'll make sure this lighting quality is set to preview. We're going to keep it very basic as we go along, just to get started, not do anything too crazy. And when you're all set, go ahead and hit build. This will take some time. It'll run in the background. Be mindful that you don't move any lights or meshes in your scene while this is doing the light build, or it's going to invalidate parts of your scene. And you'll see it's exporting the light data here, and then you'll get this crawling 0 to 100% down here in the bottom right corner. You can still navigate around your scene if you'd like. Just be careful you don't move anything. And in the next part, we'll go ahead and we'll talk about how to optimize some of that lighting. We'll talk about reflections, because everything in here is very bright and very super reflective. Look at that. We'll talk about some of the problems we might have with lighting down the line, and then we'll talk about actually applying some of our own materials to some of these objects and make this not look like a vinyl plastic chair that you might stick to. So I will see you in part 2.